Dr. Jeff, he's your two
All right. I better not hear doctor anything. All right, what's up, guys? Obviously, I know all of you guys, so I think we can skip like the formal introduction. So our main goal today, you guys all get called out all the time in a positive way by all of the clients here, your colleagues. You guys already do an awesome job of modifying, of helping to cue people. But I was really encouraged by the surveys. We got 8 back with information, with questions that you guys have, and there are actually trends kind of across it. So, yeah, did you do one, Kel? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Skylar. Pretty sure I can depend on you two not to fill it out. Yeah, thanks for that. It's good. So anyway, what we want to do today is go through answering some of those questions, go over some further modifications that we can do. Because we have a lot of people, we have a modification board, but currently a lot of that is intended for folks who are new, folks who are at a lower fitness level. We've got a lot of people in here that are, they're smoke chasers. They are big time athletes that can do more, but they're injured or they're trying to come back from something. And so just giving them a modification board is not going to solve that. And so what we're hoping to do is be able to understand a little bit more of some of the why. And honestly, you guys probably could have done a lot of this sort of amongst yourselves and talk through some of your knowledge, because we have a lot of knowledge within here. But I will go ahead and give you guys a little bit of background on some of what we're going over, hoping that that can give you a little bit more knowledge. Everyone in here has a sort of different background. Some of you guys have health and fitness education formally. Some of you have just been crushing it for long enough that you know just as much, if not more, than those that have the formal education. So yes, I'm a physical therapist. And so yes, that's sort of why I was asked to do this. And some of you more than others, probably more than Skylar and my wife, give me automatic credibility. But what I will tell you guys, what I want to lead with, is don't automatically assume because someone's a physical therapist, doctor, chiropractor, that they're actually giving good advice when it comes to fitness. And what I will tell you guys, being a PT for 10 years, about 80% of PTs, I wouldn't trust to come in here and give advice. Because we don't learn about programming. We don't learn about periodization for training. We don't learn about a lot of stuff when it comes to physical fitness. And so you will run into all sorts of things. Doctors saying you shouldn't squat again. What do you guys think of that?
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually asked, so I had a doctor that refused to come off of that, and I genuinely asked him, somewhat jokingly, and we had a good relationship. I said, how do you expect them to get off the toilet? And he kind of looked at me, he's like, okay, fair. So you're going to have people come in here that are told they should never run again. They should never squat again. All, in my opinion, junk. Should never be used, right? It's building up to those requirements. And so I think a lot of times we modify away from an exercise and we just keep modifying that same exercise. My hope today is that you guys start, at least if you're not already, working towards being able to come up with modifications that lead them back to that activity. So instead of replacing, I want us to think of modifications as creating a path to getting back to. Now, there's going to be some people that can't, right? Someone who has bone on bone in their knee probably shouldn't do box jumps, at least at a high volume. But a lot of our people can do it. But if we keep modifying so far away from that activity, we're not helping them create a path back to it. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm hoping we can do. Some of the exercises it's easier to do than others. And in about 50 minutes, we're not going to go through everything. I sort of went through the surveys, went through what I've seen and what I've talked to some of you guys about already. Comprised sort of what I would say is a list of the more common ones. And then you guys know how to reach me. We can do more of this going forwards, but I think this can be a great stepping stone. So from an anatomy standpoint, the only one we're going to go over from an anatomy standpoint is the shoulder. And the reason I want to do that is I think it's going to help you guys better understand some of my thoughts on what we should be looking at. Do not worry about the words on the screen where you guys are sitting. You probably can't make them out anyway, and that's totally fine. What I'm going to do is just show a few different pictures of the shoulder. So for you, those of you who have a medical background, or some of you, the name bicep means it has 2 heads. So not pictured here is the second head of the bicep. So here you have your long head. And as you guys can see, I'll get out of the way for the camera, but you can see this is a very long tendon. So if it has a long tendon, it has less muscle belly. So that long head that goes in and actually attaches to the top of your labrum, which is basically the top of a golf tee. If you think about how that concave surface helps to increase keeping the ball there, it's what it does for the humerus. That is a stabilizer. The short head of your bicep, which is on the inside, actually attaches up here to your coracoid process. And it's not shown in this picture, but here's why I bring that up. The bicep needs to work to stabilize. And with this is where a lot of folks get that anterior shoulder pain. At least 3 people in this room have come to me and said their shoulder hurts, and I roll over that tendon, and that's where it hurts, because that is trying to stabilize when we're doing weights that we can't handle, or too much, repetitive. See, this has to kick in and try to stabilize the shoulder when our other shoulder stabilizers can't do their job. And those other shoulder stabilizers often are those muscles on the back side of the shoulder. Okay, so this is going to be a similar view to what I just showed you, except just a little more focus on the musculature. And so here, the reason I put this picture up here, somebody posted asking about why internal rotation of the shoulder, so this position, is bad, and we'll get to that because it's not always bad. But this here is a bursa. It's basically a fluid sac that helps reduce friction within the body. You have them in your knee, you have them in your hip, your shoulder. So this is where you can get what's called shoulder impingement. You've probably heard people talk about impingement. This is one of the biggest causes with pain with overhead motion. This is your clavicle. Comes to this joint here and actually can pinch there. So when someone goes here, everyone take your arm. Go ahead, everyone do it. And I want you to put your hand right here in the front of your shoulder and actually go from thumb up to thumb down. You are taking your humerus and you are rotating it like this, okay? So you are actually turning that. And what happens when you try to raise your arm like this, everyone take your arm and try to raise it up and see how it's not as easy to go high. And now go palm down and do it. A little easier. Now go palm up. Way easier. Because when you go palm up, you've externally rotated, turn the head of that humerus to have more room under this bony arch here. Okay? So, is internal rotation bad? No, in moderation. But oftentimes, you've got that person who said, oh, when I do this, that hurts. Hey, let's just try it here. Let's try it here. Oh, yeah, that's better. Perfect. Instant win, right? So anytime someone's getting pain with overhead, especially from about here to here, we call that a painful arc. So if they're good here, but then it's just at the top it hurts, and you change that position, you can pretty much tell yourself, hey, they were having some pinching there, and we were able to clear that. The next thing I want to show, and I think we do a pretty good job of this, we tend to get... Yes, please do.
I don't know if they were ever doing any like that, but if it's hurting and we change it, does that mean like for them that should always be how they do it, or is that something that will rectify itself?
So in a perfect world, it's one of those, let's do that now to get through it. Come holler at us later, or hey, let's ask Jeff, whatever. Because no, it could just be that they're flared up. But if they say, hey, I've never been able to do this, it's that type of thing. But again, not many things are a never. And there's not many functional reasons to do this up above here anyway. And I don't think we don't do that either. So doing a raise to here definitely hits different muscles, and that's why we do it. But if someone can't tolerate that, that's where we modify. Because I'd rather they're able to do this and get that benefit than do nothing. So great question. So in my opinion, this cartoon is actually way over-exaggerated. But your scapulae are on the back, obviously, of your thorax and are tilted. They are not sitting flat, so they're angled like so. And that's why the cup that the arm bone, the humerus, goes into actually angles forward, which is why, and again, I would argue the scapular plane is probably more on this line versus where they are. But that's why here, a lot of people are better here than back here. So we don't want to do a ton here, especially loaded back here. Coming to that front, again, if someone's uncomfortable here, has a hard time here, and we'll talk about some of the prone stuff that we do face down, but that's why coming out here, a lot of times people can not only get more motion, but get less pinching, compression, irritation, etc. Now I know like when we're on our belly and we're doing these, that's kind of a different ball game because A, we're not that loaded, and B, there's benefit to doing that to then be able to do other exercises. So I'm not saying that's always bad, but I believe most of the time when we demonstrate doing front your lat raises, we're kind of a little to the front, but now you guys know why. Okay, so now when you see that person who, even though we told him to do it here, is way back here, you can actually tell them, hey, the shoulder is actually meant to be slightly forward. And you've got that background of showing them why that is, okay? Or maybe after class, and I'm going to talk about it in here, just some general pointers on how to approach that. Like you may not during the workout while they're, huffing and puffing and say something like, hey, we want you forward because of, but you can do it and say, hey, get with me after class. I can tell you a little more about that. Something along those lines might be a better opportunity to make a change with that person that's going to stick versus them just changing it. Oh, sweet, Chelsea's gone. I can go back to doing this now, right? Cool. And this picture really is not that necessary because we already touched on all the parts. I just thought it was a different view, but I like the other one better. So any questions on that? Just on that basic anatomy. Makes sense? Hopefully that just helps you guys understand a little bit of the why, because a lot of us know what to tell people, but I think when we know why, it's a little bit easier. So we went over the shoulder anatomy, and a big part of the reason I wanted to do that is so that you guys could understand some of those structures that are in the front of the shoulder. So as you guys know, the bicep is there, you've got the pec there. One of the things that I think 6 people identified was reverse flies. It's something that they often have to correct, and I've had a few of you actually come and talk to me about, hey, whether it's standard or reverse flies, what are my thoughts on position and where they put themselves? So since then also people were saying that they've seen it not only done wrong, but they feel sometimes we're even demoing it. I'm going to just kind of a disclaimer. I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable as like a safe space, saying, hey, this is how I see it demonstrated. And if that's how you've demonstrated it, please don't take that as like a slight. We're all here trying to do the same thing, trying to help people get better. So because I don't want someone now to be afraid to say what they see and what they think, because again, we all have that same goal. So that said, with a reverse fly, can somebody demonstrate how they see it done poorly? Would someone be comfortable? Yeah, would you mind? Or 10's cool? Do you need like 40s or? I'd rather 30s. So let's go through some of the stuff that we see with reverse flies. Like the W. Yeah.
I was going to say, I see a lot of people standing and
Yeah, for sure. So again, a lot of us probably understand, but just in case physics is so long ago that we're not remembering, remember anything that's a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a barbell, it works directly downward, right? It uses gravity. So gravity is up and down. When we're talking about bands, that's where we can pull in this plane. Anything done other than up and down with a dumbbell is not working against gravity, so you're cheating yourself. So yeah, doing this, you're basically doing an isometric bicep hold, and that's about all the resistance is doing. So I agree about that. I think that's an easy sell. We all know that that can't be. And I think the quick way to tell a client why that's important, and when you're up here, you're actually not getting any resistance, that's not helping you. Maybe not quite that way. Maybe like, hey, you'll get more out of it if you get here. And then here, we've programmed before, at least in some of the guys' lifts, there is some value in doing this motion, the W's, but guess what? With less weight, and they're very different. So if the goal is programmed intentionally to be this, there's a reason for that. So yeah, if you're coming up here and doing a W, you're engaging a totally different set of muscles now. You're getting into that rotator cuff, you're externally rotating. So I agree. The other thing that I see a lot, I like when I hear, kind of bring those elbows back, because if you take these, I'll just demonstrate real quick, especially when we're at high volume, which as we know, we can get to, and you get that person that's way throwing it back like that, shoulder here, you're putting that shoulder, all of this tissue in the anterior shoulder or front of the shoulder is being placed on repeated tension and stress, okay? So again, in small volume, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we do not want to repeatedly 40 sometimes take that shoulder and put it back into that position. You're putting a lot of stress on that bicep. you're putting a lot of stress on the anterior shoulder capsule as well. Anybody disagree, see it different, have a question? So me personally, with these, the other thing that I want to demonstrate, and this is why I have a few sets out for you guys, because I want you guys just a real quick run through it. Here, if I were to take heavier weights, I'm going to struggle to get these up here, and I'm going to really try. But what's interesting is if you give someone lighter weights, even half of what they're used to, they can properly engage those scapular muscles. So getting those back and actually squeezing, whereas they can take heavier weights, but then they're more using rear delts. Okay, they're getting that shoulder. But the muscles, do you mind? I'll use you as my demo. Just turn around real quick. The muscles we really want to make sure we're able to also get are in through here. Okay, so you've got your rhomboids, you've got your middle trap, which helps to bring those shoulder blades back. And again, the thing that's going to keep these clients able to come back, don't just look at every workout as them trying to get maximum gains, because they're going to burn out. If they're working in an area that they're not strong and don't have some of that foundational strength. So there's a lot of benefit in our clients that come in here doing these with lighter weights and really focusing on that proper control. And I want you guys, go ahead, maybe you guys grab a few 8s. Yeah.
So when we're doing these, is there a difference between like the rear delt fly and just a reverse fly? If that makes sense.
From a naming standpoint, I don't name them differently. I mean, I just sort of, like with patients, I just have different intentions. And guys, just try to take those. Hopefully that what you grabbed is lighter than what you're used to, especially if we're just doing like 10. Sorry. I want you to grab something lighter than you're used to. And I want you to really think about your shoulder blades. And on the way down, I want you to really think about going slow. Like you can actually see, even challenging those little muscles between the shoulder blades. And my rear delt could do that all day long. What do you think, TJ? Feel it? They're different. And so what I want to show you guys with that, the whole reason I did that as an example, I treat a ton of patients who go to the gym, they sit on that machine we all know, and they row like 150 pounds, right? So then when I give them a red TheraBand and I tell them to do a row, like, I do 150 pounds, that's easy. But the thing is, the minute you go up enough that those little muscles can't do their job, what do you think they do? Peace. I'm gonna let the other guys do it. It's like a group project. When you've got the real little meek, quiet person and the loud, obnoxious person like me, that person is just gonna sit there. So you got to find ways to get them. So in my opinion, especially that person who has shoulder pain, getting them to do that, humble themselves a little bit, or maybe we adjust our programming periodically and we say, hey, today's gonna be a shoulder maintenance day. I think that would go a long way, because working those is what's going to keep you able to do the other heavy lifts. If we're just always balls to the wall and going with the heavy lift and not doing those other pieces, or they're doing them outside of here, that's why so many of our people have shoulder pain. Does that make sense? And that applies to rows. I mean, it really applies to everything we do. And I'm guilty of it too. We're here, I'm with the guys, I'm like, I'm gonna go with that heavier bend over row. But then I go and I mix in taking cables and doing different stabilization work, trying to work that. Because if you only do the heavy, you never train those stabilizing muscles. All right? Yeah, I'm just gonna use this.
So on like different movements, where you're making like a good mind-muscle connection is a little different. Like the rows, for example.
Yeah.
About that. Instead of pulling from the hand necessarily, I like to focus on like pulling with the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
So on the rear delts, is there something that you can like think of that you're initiating that movement from? Try to get like the maximum engagement or target the right area, not overcompensate or.
A lot of times people will say, like, think about trying to squeeze a pencil between your shoulder blades. I don't love that one because you're never going to get them that close together. And I feel like then people over squeeze. So, but try to bring your shoulder blades back together. Start with that. And that's the other part with the initiation. You want to initiate with that versus, oh, I'm up here, now I'm here trying to engage them, because again, they can't. So if you start here and you engage with those shoulders, again, you could do 20 of those with body weight and you'd start to feel it.
I do the same thing. I almost always let my elbows guide. Almost always. I never utilize my hands, or from here down, I'm not thinking about anything. It's about this, right? So if it's rear If it's reverse flies, I'm thinking about my elbows pulling towards the middle of my back, right? If we're doing rows,
yes, he's doing that there. I'm not really concerned about keeping this entirely straight and going all the way straight.
Correct.
It's more, I
Yeah.
want to just get that, like what you guys were both saying, engagement here.
the tree hug.
This doesn't matter. It's just holding the weight. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, I mean, really, the difference here between going out long lever and short, more than anything, this is going to help you get the delt a little more. Here, I mean, but the truth is, this just increases the lever arm. So it just means I can take a lighter weight and get more challenge, right? Because the shorter the lever arm, the less torque at the joint.
Right.
So to me, they're about the same if you're focusing there, but yeah, absolutely. Driving with the elbows, whatever can get their shoulder blades to go back together. That's perfect. The next thing, and so like Dev, I saw you try those. Were you able, obviously, I know, you do heavier weight with that, but doing with the lighter weight, were you able to feel those? Sweet. All right.
Yeah, it's kind of like, even though it felt light, it was trying to go slow. You could feel like that shake.
Yep, exactly. And then if you've got somebody, I meant to bring these over. The other option too, guys, is we have a number of these. And I'll bring them over there. My bad. But the other thing is we can take these. And I like these personally more than the ones we use for the warm-up. These are going to have a little more resistance to them. But you can take this and work with that person on doing those as well. And what's nice here is they're going to get that resistance. They're going to get it at the top, and they're going to get it on the way back down as well. It's just a little more gentle as they go through, and you can adjust, where they're at. And again, if you guys are doing this or you've got someone and they ask you for some suggestions on what to work on, I tend to do it in different angles too, because those different fibers of the muscle angle in different ways, and the muscle pulls in the line of its fibers. Okay. So, any questions on that? So someone's having a hard time with dumbbells, whether they just can't seem to get it with the dumbbells, whether they're not following your cueing, you can try to grab a band, because you're going to find somebody who just struggles with the dumbbell where it's at in space, but you give them a band and they're going to do a lot better. We see that with patients all the time. So lat raises, we talked about in there, so I'm going to kind of just gloss over that so we can get to the other stuff. Lat raises, I think one of the issues, well here, you guys tell me, what are a couple of the issues that you guys see with lat raises?
Using their back, turning them into
Also see
a bad reverse line.
straight arm like this, and they're straight up, and they try to do this number.
Yes, exactly. The scarecrow,
Yes.
right? So again, out to the side like this, closing down that joint. Coming forward is going to help a little bit. We tend to demonstrate with a slight bend in the elbow, right? Okay. And yeah, so what else do we see?
Brittany nailed it too. I mean, that whole like getting, this is a lot of the time I can't handle the weight, but I don't want to pick up the fives, right? Because like Jeff's looking at me, so like I'm not going to pick up the fives, so I'm just going to do this number. It's a kettlebell swing / whatever.
I'm looking at you because I want the fives. You almost done with those?
It's your set.
Okay.
Their shoulders once they start to get heavy and not weight in their back.
Yeah.
Over, like going up really high too. Yeah, I think the hard thing with these is I even see a lot of trainers get heavy weights and go like up, and I'm,
Like when they're really pushing, trying to
Yeah.
get through, and then
yeah,
The balance.
yeah, and I think it's like can't correct, like if
That's
if
fair.
our trainers aren't doing it while working out, like, and I'm going up to clients, I'm like, hey,
And they're like, hey, look at Jeff over there throwing heavy weights around. Yeah, I got it. But yeah, I get it.
I think I put this one on my survey. Actually.
Yeah. No, that's very valid. And we're all guilty of it. I know I am. I'm sitting here, I'm watching some of the other people, I'm working out with somebody, and I'm like, oh, 2 more, come on. But the truth is, especially if it's someone we know is newer, is dealing with any kind of injuries, anything, if we've tried a million times, like there's people you're just not going to get through, right? But definitely don't grow weary, I guess is kind of the encouragement I would give. Like, do your part. Give the cues. Go to your other trainers and see if they can make a difference, right? We shouldn't take it personally, but like you may not take my feedback very well. But then if I'm like, hey, can you check and see if you can help Chelsea with that exercise? You'd be surprised, like his approach might work better with you or vice versa. And so that's the other thing too, that I would encourage, because it's true with PT too. Like I put my pride aside. Sometimes I'm just not getting through the patient, and then someone that I don't think should be able to get through to them better, they do it, and I'm like, well, why did that work? It didn't work with me. So I think that's important too. And then actually 3 people put kickbacks on there. I'm assuming we're talking about tricep kickbacks. KK, you're nodding emphatically. So can you tell us what are folks doing with kickbacks that stands out to you all?
Oh my goodness. I mean, even just their posture, I can never do this swinging motion, and I'm like, no, I need to like go down, block it, and like make sure that you're engaged here, but they're constantly swinging, they're working more of their biceps, and it's a continuous.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else? Anyone else see anything different?
They typically don't lock into elbows, so it starts here.
Yep.
I'm like, keep them right there.
But to be fair, I feel like our trainers do a great job in demos. You guys always, at least in the class I'm in or I'm being a part of, I always hear that we don't move our elbows. Like keep our elbows, keep them right there, and just move this. So I do feel like we are doing our part in communicating.
I don't think that's a workout that we're concerned with injury more so than just form correction.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree, and I feel like, yeah, I forget, it was whenever this week we had those in the workout. And now I don't remember which day, but yeah, I remember very specifically hearing the trainer, perfectly point out, keep those elbows back, and if it's a weight that's too heavy to keep the elbow back, go down, because again, you're compensating. But yeah, that's not probably a big injury one as much, unless the other thing I was waiting to see if someone pointed out, and that's why I grabbed the dowel, and I thought you were going there, any of these motions, and a lot of you guys put this on the survey, whether it be bent over rows, reverse flies, kickbacks, a lot of our people have a hard time finding the proper bent over position.
You said to say position. I feel like I'm constantly asking, can you go down farther? Like, I don't know, maybe is there some kind of something wrong? And so I'll start by saying, can you, is there an injury or can you go down any farther? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, bring that chest all the way down.
So what's interesting, a lot of times people don't know, and so we can use this and we can use the pull there. A lot of people, they might know how to hinge, but what they don't know is to push their butt back to engage their hamstrings and glutes. So it's a motor control issue as much, basically like a mind to muscle issue, or knowing where they are in space, as it is like a can you do it? Does your back hurt? Are you strong enough to get there? I would argue there's probably not many people in this gym that don't have the mobility to do it, at least to get down to here. Some of us, when we do it, we are like way down. I mean, they're like completely parallel, but a lot of our people even struggle to get to, 45 or so. So some things we can do, and I just talked to Britt and Dev as we were setting up, I think it would be good to possibly get some PVCs in here. A lot big in the CrossFit space and like in Olympic lifting, they'll use them a ton. They come in handy in so many ways, but even just working with someone, you can give them a dowel in front, because then it stabilizes them, because some people, they're not stable front to back. So when they try to do this, they're not really able to control. So if you teach them by holding on to something here, just working on this, and exercises like good mornings are a great thing to mix into a warm-up on a day where we're going to have hinging. So again, big in like the CrossFit and Olympic lifting space, whether you have a dowel or whether you just go, here, even just working on, a straight leg, like a true good morning, or even just working on a standing hip hinge and integrating that and making sure that they're comfortable getting from point A to point B without a load. And then, you can even take a dumbbell, put it on your shoulders, and work on some good mornings as either a workout, like an accessory that we mix in, or as part of, hey, you know what, they're struggling mightily, with this exercise. Why don't you work on doing some of these? Oh, and then the other piece with the dowel, if you have someone that just cannot get it, because you will get people, they do not know how to bend without arching, or the opposite, over accentuating. You can take a dowel. You could do the body pump bars, but to me that's a little awkward. You take a dowel, you actually put it 3 points of contact, their sacrum, mid-back, and head, and it teaches them what that's supposed to feel like. Because you really can't bend if you're keeping that in position. And so you really feel your hamstrings light up, you feel those glutes, and that's a great way. Again, you're probably not going to the closet getting one of these, stopping them in the middle of their workout while their partner spins to make that correction. Where I would suggest you make that suggestion, do the best you can during the workout. And I get it, especially 5:15, like some of you guys, you got to clean, you got to get out. So if you have the opportunity, or maybe if you know Travis, Britt, are sticking around, maybe, hey, you know what? Grab us after the workout real quick. Let us just show you something, and then go tell Britt, Travis, whoever you know might be sticking around, and say, hey, would you be able to show Devin with a PVC how to do this? I feel like a lot of times, at least, you guys have relationships with specific people who are in your class, right? So if you float around a lot, or it's someone who goes to a lot of classes, maybe not. But if you've got that person, maybe I'm filling in, right? Maybe I'm one of you guys and I fill in, and I'm trying to make a difference with somebody who's in there, but I know, oh man, Skylar knows him real well. He's always in there. I might say, hey, go grab Skylar. Skylar, over the next couple of days, can you hook up with so-and-so? And again, it seems like extra, but that just keeps them healthy, keeps them coming to build up that community. So, questions? All right, cool. We're moving along. All right, so then the other big ones and big hitters that we talked about were kettlebell swings and then things on the box. So we're going to go kettlebell swings next. So I would like to hear from you guys. What do you guys see as the biggest issues with kettlebell swings, and or what do you hear most often from our clients about kettlebell swings? About 3 minutes. For you, 1. Okay, so that's your observation, right? Is that they're not? Okay, sweet. Yep. Yep. Okay, so follow-up question to that, because follow-up question is, are they afraid to do it because their back already hurts, or are they good until they do kettlebell swings? Both, right? Okay, so let's break those down. So the person who has back pain already, and there's kettlebell swings, that's definitely someone that we can, if it's chronic back pain, they probably need to come see someone like myself. But if there's someone who's dealing, like Kelly has, with an acute issue of back pain, and they're slowly getting back to it, then some of these modifications can also be things for them. If it's someone who just flat out doesn't want to do them, then we can break it down into some of the components and just not have them do it. If it's someone, then the other one is someone who's like, hey, I can crush almost everything in these workouts for whatever reason. Kettlebell swings are the one thing that hurts me, so I don't want to do them. 2 issues there. If they just flat out not want to do them, I guess it becomes a question of like, if we had some ways to help you do them, would you like to? If they don't force them. I'm sure you guys know that, and I'm sure none of you would, but encourage them. Ultimately, if you are not comfortable and you don't feel good, don't do it. But for that person who says, man, I hate that I have to sit out the kettlebell swings. I've gotten back to everything else, but how do we get me back to doing a kettlebell swing? There are a number of ways. So a few of the components of a kettlebell swing, as you guys know, obviously is the hinge here, but where do most people struggle? Here, right? Popping. So what do? They either struggle to get that, so they come up and they throw their arms, or they do one of these guys and they lean way back, right? So when we hyperextend like that, that leads to compression in the low back. It ends up, we basically extend and use our trunk extensors here until they run out of room, or our hip flexors are tight, and that stops them, versus properly engaging the glutes, going into sort of what we call triple extension at the ankles, knees, hips, locking out and taking advantage of that momentum, and then starting over. Okay, so for that person who has trouble engaging, which I would argue, and I'll see if anyone disagrees, that's the big problem for most folks, is that activation. And that's true of the person that just doesn't have good form, but they're not hurting, or the person that can do everything else. If you can do a deadlift, squat, box jump, and have no pain, but you have pain with kettlebell swings, it's definitely you, not the kettlebell swing. Right? So I'm going to sneak over here with Dev. This is something I think you guys could set up pretty easily for your folks. So we have, I want to say 3 red, 2 yellow, 2 blue of these guys. And a very common thing some of you have probably seen is like a banded pull through. And so taking one of the heavier kettlebells on here and on the black, honestly, it would probably go even less sliding. but I'm going to turn just for the camera there. But they basically, you hook it through, you just feed it right through, grab both handles, and you basically walk it out. Of course, be mindful of where the band hits, but you go into that hinge and you come up and you get that lockout, and you can have them hold it and then come out of it slow. So you can actually work on that motion and the band is pulling you back. Yeah, and maintaining that. So if you think of a real kettlebell swing, so if you're here and you're coming up to here, there's that period from here to here where once it comes up, you're kind of in this held position and the kettlebell is sort of traveling from the force that you delivered with the hip thrust. So that's why I'll have people do that and do like a 1 to 2 second hold, because otherwise, if you teach them just to do this, what does their kettlebell swing look like? They lose it before it even reaches the top or comes back down. Questions? Disagreement? Anything? So these bands go yellow, red, blue. So I didn't lay out a bunch of them. But as we go, if you guys want to try that, I'll leave it set up afterwards if you guys just want to go through and try it. Originally, I set it up longer, but I was thinking of flow of a class, and I was thinking of like a 5:15 or a Saturday 9 a.m. If you feed it through the other way, which originally I did, it's too long. Tripping hazard. It's dark in here. No one's seeing that black thing. So I would just encourage, when you do this, be mindful of what the flow is. So I probably wouldn't have it laying right here. All right. So just be mindful of that. And then, think about where they're going to be. And then I would tuck them back quickly. Maybe something smart to do sort of off to the back. Because the last thing I want is someone tripping over one of those. Let's hear it.
I see a lot of people, I'm just going to use this because I need a lightweight too. Like they're doing the right motion, but you can tell there's like it's just like they're using their shoulders more than like hinging with their hips. So like how do you like tell someone, hey, you're like doing the right motion, but where you're not doing it right?
Do you think so when you see that, do you think the weight might be too heavy?
No, I mean, usually it's people with like a kettlebell, like a small one.
So I almost think they need more. So it might be the opposite problem. So, if they're here, I'm not getting that much because what am I popping up, right? So if you have the heavier weight, you go through, our brain sort of subconsciously is going to think, how much force do I really need to raise this? So if it's too light for them, so basically, if you took that really light dumbbell and tried it, I think you would experience the same thing. It's like, what? Yeah, I should just do it with my arms. Our brain tells us to do things the easiest way. So unless we are so consciously doing it, our brain's it's like water. It's always going to find the path of least resistance and just do it the quick, easy way. So in that case, if their form is great, I might honestly challenge them to go up in weight and see if it's better, because they will quickly realize, I can't do this all with my arms, and that might teach them, I better take advantage of my much stronger lower body. The other thing a lot of times is that their core is still weak, even if they're in the right position, because what does the core do? It transfers force from the lower body to the upper body. So, that's the other answer, but my gut says it's probably that they're not doing the weight that they should be.
Okay, you'll never see that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then real quick, we already, I think, do this. What are some of the most common modifications you guys are using for kettlebell swings?
If we need to have them do something else and then not do the kettlebell,
yeah,
like a kettlebell deadlift is the first one.
Okay, so I've heard squats, I've heard deadlifts. Not saying any of those are wrong. What else? Okay, so my question is, what did we identify as probably the hardest part of the kettlebell swing that they need to work on? It's this, right? Either the hinge or this last bit, right? So, and I swear I've seen some of you guys do it. Have them on the ground and have them do a bridge. Have them grab that same kettlebell and do a hip thrust. Have them go, and if they don't want to do that, have them go lay on the ground, put their feet on the box, and do a single leg bridge. Have them work on the motion, just like we're going to have the same idea when it comes to the boxes, and we're going to get close on time here. But You want your modification to, as much as possible, mimic the phase of the exercise you're replacing. So again, I get it. Like on the board, it needs to be something like a deadlift, a swing, if there's something they can't do, because you have to be careful how you're programming it. But if you've got somebody who you know is going to be around a while and you want to give them something that's going to help them move the needle in the right direction, definitely think more specific. Cool?
Really good ideas. I like that. That's one of the biggest ones I struggle with, is trying to break the same muscle.
Yeah, I think the banded pull-throughs are going to be huge. And I was trying to look too, we could almost even, instead of the kettlebell, hook them like around the rack there. I'm still trying to come up with some creative ideas, whether you could anchor something to the wall somewhere. Just to be able to, there's a bunch of modifications we could do if we had somewhere to anchor something that wouldn't create a safety hazard. And so I always want to keep that in mind. Push-ups were on there. So we've done a lot of upper body. I think we can get a couple pieces of low-hanging fruit here. Flies on the bench for like a chest fly. It's actually very much the same as what we've already talked about for me. As far as when you're doing a chest fly, finding a weight where you're able to come back and properly not bounce at that bottom. So a lot of people, what are the modifications or what are the issues that you see that lead to you modifying a chest fly? Is it someone says they can't do it, so they're asking, or is it you see them doing something wrong?
Straight arms a lot.
Okay.
People think that because it's a fly, they have to come out here like this, and so they can't do that because they don't. In other words, there's too much pressure on the shoulder, but also they don't feel like they can go heavy enough to do that, right?
Okay.
Which again, it's about, when I do that, it's about leading with the elbow, it's about hugging the tree to engage it. That's really the main one that I see.
What else?
I think figuring out your placement, same thing with lat raises. I feel like a lot of them are up here versus being comfortable having their elbows below their shoulders. What is that?
Yeah, that I agree with for sure. So that's just a cueing thing, but I agree. We're good. Not doing them way up here, but there is actually some value to here and also doing them here. So I will actually, when we have them in high volume, I will actually do some of them here, and then I'll go here, and then I will do some upward. And again, if you think of the pec has a clavicular head and a sternal aspect. So the pec, the pennation of it fans all to here, but it goes this way and this way. So if you think about that, you're going to hit these fibers up in a little higher position, so within moderation, and then you're going to hit the other fibers in the lower position. And if you guys ever do that, you'll feel it. My thing, I agree about the straight arms. Again, if someone's used to doing them with straight arms and they go down in weight, that's not as big a deal. It's not that this position is the enemy, but if I take 15-pound dumbbells and go here, it's a lot less stressful here, and I can drive the elbows back. The caution, though, is if you go too far back, it's the exact same thing as we talked about here, except now the load is driving you back farther. Look at the shoulder, right? So if I bend here, look at that angle I'm creating. And most of us, everybody stand, just relax, stand up straight. Arms hanging at your sides. Now don't change anything, but how many of you are like me and have your palms almost facing backwards? Of course, Devin has good posture. So some of you guys are about here, but some of us are like this, right? So internally rotated, slouched, head is forward. Now I'm exaggerating. None of you are standing like this, but we've all seen it, right? So if you think about posture, we tend to roll ourselves up. We put our head forward, our shoulders round. We tend to be here. We're texting. We're tired. We're at a computer all day. So that shoulder tends to roll and compress. And so one of the number one reasons that our clients have anterior shoulder pain is, like we've talked about, that repeated motion here, that weakness in the back of the shoulder. So with a fly, if they're going to go deep, agreed, we definitely want the elbows bent. I would actually argue, especially for anybody that you know who struggles with shoulder pain, I stop them before they go past what we call the mid-axillary line. Because again, yes, someone who's trying to bodybuild, getting here is key, but this little bit of difference, strength is specific to angles. So I may not get as strong back in this motion, but functionally during the day, taking care of my kids, all the different things, where do I need that motion? I'd much rather be in the gym, burning the calories, moving the needle forward. So again, if they have pain with those, the number one thing I'm going to do is modify that. People put push-ups on there. It's the same thing. So in our lift night last night, we did very deep. We did deficit push-ups, which were amazing, killer, except for people with shoulder pain, anyone that has shoulder pain, it's better for them to be able to just do a push-up maybe to here and still be able to do something than to go deep with it. And I just don't know that we always have made that clear to them, right? And so better than not doing it, let's modify the depth. So there's a lot of folks out there who only have their people go to like 90-degree isometrics or 90-degree. So I'm not opposed to doing push-ups, to full depth, but anybody who struggles, see if they can go just to here, and that's still going to move the needle. And from a function standpoint, most things we do in life and that they need to be able to do, still going to move the needle by going here. As far as positioning goes, I think you guys know, we all demonstrate that pretty well. Anyone have any other issues with push-ups?
It's good to know because I'm pretty hardcore when it comes to like chest to deck. If I see people not doing it, I want to yell at them, but I don't. But I'm like, why are you not going full? And it could just be that they don't have the shoulder mobility.
It's the same with dips. So it's the exact same with dips. So you guys are going to get a lot of people who have a pain with a dip or have pain when doing a dip. And sometimes, say they have pain here. They go down. Sometimes you can even have them do a stretch. You can even just have them go here and stretch out that anterior shoulder. And you'd be shocked that then they can do them. So a lot of times it is a mobility and a tightness issue. So again, that position, think about how that stretches across the front of the shoulder. Well, if it's tight and I just go right into doing them, what's going to happen? If I have a tight hamstring and I go right into hamstring curls, what's going to happen? Right? So I 100% agree. It can be a mobility issue. It can be a strength issue. It could be a knowledge issue. So exactly what you said, in my opinion, is the perfect thing. Hey, Jason, something like, hey, are you able to go all the way down? Is there, are you going part way for a reason? Something along those lines. Because then I might say, yeah, because I'm saving some energy, or it might be, yeah, man, that kills me if I go down lower, versus, hey, come on, man, get your chest down. And maybe I'm new and I'm like, well, he doesn't know I can't do that, but I really don't like this guy yelling at me, right? So just a good call out, good thought. So we are at 8.
Push-ups. This is just a little bit of form. You see the chicken wing.
Oh, yeah.
Time, but their hands are turned in.
Diamond push-ups.
Instead of doing that, have them point their fingers out. That's going to force that bicep or the tricep to stay close to the body.
I think the thing that we need to pay attention to, Jeff, if you real quick demo it, Ed, I'm going to give us about 5 minutes since we've got some of it set up so that we can hit the lower body.
Yeah.
But the big thing, I think, what I would like the trainers really know to look for is our hand placement.
Yeah.
A lot of times they think that their hand belongs right above their shoulders, and that's not the case.
No.
Push up, your chest goes over your hand. In a forward motion, it is not completely aligned. So we want to kind of do that kind of look forward.
Yeah.
You see a lot of it where they're here.
They should be under. Nope. So when you come down, they should end up at basically at your armpit.
Yeah, yep. Your hands go to your armpits, not your shoulders.
Yep.
You see a lot of
correct.
That motion.
So, and there are slight variations depending on which source you look at, but I know like National Academy of Sports Medicine, they will tell you, well, actually, Kelly, what do they tell you? Just kidding. Shoulder width. So they will tell you just outside of shoulder width. So, but I agree, there's a lot of people who end up doing their push-ups like this. And that's why the elbows come out, because I'm too high. I'm doing the equivalent of like this. So you want to come down so that you land, basically your thumbs are in your armpit here, and then you can go up. And that brings us to a good point. I know the classic modification for a push-up is kneeling, but one thing to consider, look at the angle when I'm doing a kneeling push-up. It's actually like a decline, or would that be incline? Decline push-up, right? Because now I'm actually pushing with my lower pec versus if you look at a traditional, I'm up here. So it's slight, it's a good, easy, quick variation, but.
So what's the variation? What would be a good variation to ensure that they still get the chest right? I guess it's in the middle.
So I like doing dumbbell chest press on their back, especially for someone with shoulder pain. And the reason for that is it limits their motion, right? So if I'm here, I stop down at the bottom, and I'm not going to go into that painful position. So that person who can't do bench press or can't do push-ups, that's a great modification. All right, so we will definitely want to circle back more on some of the lower body, but to make sure we get into a few of the things that I know people asked about, although most of the questions, a lot of them were upper body, box jumps, right? So box jumps are the big ticket item that we get the most comments on. We have people not doing. What would you guys say? What is the purpose of a box jump? You know, if you think about things like endurance, strength, power, mobility, what is a box jump? It's an explosive movement, right? What are we modifying it with? Right? Yeah, and that's okay. Like, I don't mean that to be judgmental at all. But, so you're taking a box jump, and again, this is where I'm talking about moving the needle. It's one of those things. Like, if someone tells me, hey, I got bone-on-bone arthritis in my knees, I was told not to, or I don't want to do box jumps, they hurt. Okay, maybe we're not trying to move the needle to get back to box jumps. But if it's Travis who comes to me and he's like, hey, man, you know, I'm really, you know, my ankle's been hurt and I haven't been able to do box jumps. Well, we all know Travis wants to get back to box jumps. So having him do a squat is not moving the needle towards going back to a box jump. So you need to find that component of fitness that's as similar to what you're working on. So that domain would be power and explosiveness and control. So what I wrote on here are things like, how about a squat jump, right? And so I can start out as easy as, and you know, it doesn't have to be a full on, but instead of jumping all the way to the box, you know, can they start working on getting that motion? Because that leads to that power to leave the ground, that eccentric control when you come back down. And again, they may not be able to do that at this point, but that's another idea and another modification. Another one would be things like, again, if they can't squat, even just doing small broad jumps could be another option. Because they're already squatting, they're already getting all the other movement patterns. So even just something like having them doing some broad jumps is still working on that takeoff, that landing, and getting that cardiovascular challenge.
So a lot of the time I hear too, and Travis went through this for a while, I've gone through it where I don't do box jumps because my Achilles is sore, right? I don't want to explode off of my Achilles for 77 reps.
Exactly.
Right? Even just stepping down, I don't want to explode down. So when we have something like that, and we still want to keep an explosive type of movement, what do you suggest there?
I wouldn't.
I was going to say, basically what I just heard, yeah, and that's what I was struggling to think. And that, thank you, Brittany, because honestly, that's the safest, easiest answer. And that's basically what I told. I mean, do you mind if I kind of just to, you know, kind of go through? I mean, that's what Travis and I talked about when he was having trouble with his Achilles. It was like, I know this is hard, but I need you to dial it back. I need you to not run, jump rope, and do this. Give it 2 weeks, work on these things, and come back. So that's where it's like, shut it down for now so that we can do it later.
They have like different sections for like stabilization, strength, and all this other stuff. So they have different exercises that are like maximum power or like explosiveness. What that would be. Would it be a good alternative if you can't do the box jumps, you could dial it back, but we modify that with another type of explosive type movement, because it's not exactly getting the same end game that the box jump would get, because that's what we're training, but it's still stretching the body in an explosive way. Would that be a good alternative maybe?
To be clear, you mean in the general, you're not talking about someone whose Achilles is flared up.
No, I am.
You are.
Like, let's say Ballard's Achilles is box jumps, but he wants to stretch the body out in the same kind of way for, I guess, calorie burn, whatever the case may be. But I want to have that same effect on my body.
Kind of quick twitch.
So would it be still a good alternative to say, okay, if we can't do that, let's do some explosive chest type movement or back or whatever.
I would argue that most of those gains are going to be region specific. I mean, if you're trying to get something at that pace, then you can do that plenty of ways, right? You can you could do kettlebell swings at a faster rate. A ballistic challenge meant to be for power and explosiveness of the lower body is not going to move the needle by doing explosive upper body. And the quick twitch, you know, fibers that you'd be working upper body don't really have a ton of carryover to the lower. Now, if that's something you enjoy, you can do it. But I would not take most of our people and even go down that rabbit hole as a replacement to this, because they're in here doing all the other upper body already anyway. Does that make sense? But just some other options, just to go down a list. things like skipping. Again, if there's room in here, 5:15, then this is all, maybe not. But even just things like skipping, that's a power. You're getting that movement. That might be a lot more tolerable than this. And the other thing is cutting the reps. I think we all agree, for the most part, I don't ever see much business that I need to do 100 box jumps unless it's just my pride, and I want to keep up with somebody. But a lot of times I scale those back. And you guys already do stepping down from the jump, things like that are all great ideas. The other thing is, again, pride aside, moving people down this way, right? So, it hurts when I do a box jump. Well, then maybe you shouldn't do it on the 2-foot box. Why don't we try it on a different box? And why don't we bring that back down? Again, I think we'll probably want to do something like this on lower body just in itself, because there's so much more we could talk about. The other one I want to make sure we do before we go is the box step overs and power steps. So there's a lot on that. And each of you that commented on it got to about the same place, but in a different way. So number one, do we think we should be stepping up here like this or like this? With the heel, right? So you want to get the full foot up there. Everyone line up on a box. Anyone that doesn't have unless you have a reason not to. If you have an injury, please don't do it.
Got about 3 minutes.
All right. So I just want you guys here. There you go. And I want you guys to do a step up, and I want you to really think about pushing down with your heel. Really think about pushing your heel down. You're trying to smash it into that box. And if you're not used to doing them that way, what do you feel when you do that?
Glutes.
Way more in the glute, right? So, Skylar, I would love to know what you were thinking with that smirk right there. But yeah, so pushing down with that heel. And the other thing is when you go up, some people are really launching off of that trail leg. But the truth is, we're really focusing on that front leg. And I think that's where a lot of our Achilles issues come from, is people get tired and they're on a box that's a little too high for them. So they explode off that bottom leg, which is really not the intent with a true step up. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a power step. So we program power steps and we program box jumps, but there is a big difference between like a traditional step up and a power step. Okay, so I think step ups are also a great modification, slow and controlled, because it's building that control. Now the power step, can you show me a power step? Oh, see, yes, you did that on purpose. Oh, sorry, PVC. There you go. Good. Okay, so again, getting that full foot there. Now, of course, we don't jump off of our heel, right? I get that. So we're going to get more of the front of the foot. But even there, as we go up, getting that full foot, I see people go up and they stay on the toe the whole time. It's like being a toe runner. And this just that increased load. So
will not only put that forward, but they hang their foot off.
Yep.
Where it encourages that overextension of the Achilles.
Yep.
You'll see a lot of the time their foot is only here, and they do this number here.
Yep.
And they push with the middle.
Full foot. And then the last thing, I'm going to send you guys, I'll put together a video, I think, over the next week for the other part. But for the lateral step overs, it's the same thing. Do you guys put your weight on your toes when you do the lateral step overs? Sorry. Yep. So with an up and over, you might not even know what you do until you do it. So here's what a lot of people do. I'll just tell you. They go like this. They're on their toes. Try doing it with your weight flat. And this will be the last thing we do today. But I want to see you guys do this, and I want you to push through your heel. Keep your heel flat.
I think a lot of the time the problem is speed.
Yep. They're trying to go too fast.
So it's more of a speed and agility move.
Yep.
As opposed to a power move.
For injury-wise, do you recommend people with a bad knee have to do this?
What's up?
Is it wrong to be on your toes though? Like, is it like, not like take somebody having an issue with it out of it, because I do my power steps and my up and overs, I do them more on the balls of my feet than my heels.
I mean, it depends on goals. You're not going to, it depends what you're trying to do. You're not getting your glute nearly as much, and you're loading that Achilles a ton. So if you're starting to have, someone starts to have pain, no, I would not do that. If you're trying to do them fast because you're trying to race with Travis all the time, then yeah, go ahead and be on your toes. Yeah, speed.
But for
Yeah, so I would tend to have our general people focus more, and I welcome feedback on that. I'd be curious to know, what your thoughts are. And but for our general people, I would tend to say it is better to get them off of their toes.
I told Travis, like on power steps, for me, like when I try to do them on my heels, I find that my ankles get more sore. I don't know if it's from that transfer from like heel to toe, like through the explosion at the top.
Might be.
I think also like what KK was saying, she's talking about people with bad knees doing it. I think part of the reason they have a bad knee is because they're doing this number where they're on the ball of their foot and their knee is forward, knees over toes, right?
Yeah.
And they don't have the strength in their knee to do so. So when they have that up like this, you're putting all the pressure on your knee as opposed to putting it in your heel and in your butt.
Yep.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. Because knee over toe is not always bad. Dev and I have had that conversation. But it's bad when you don't have the requirements. So we've gone way over. I'm sorry, Brittany. I promise we'll all help clean up. So we can go ahead and stop it there.